Hello everybody, and welcome to the LJL Officially Unofficial Podcast, episode 23. Gentlemen, welcome. I am your host, Alex, otherwise known as Sexy Goodbye Master on the internet, and of course I'm joined by the brave man himself, Sam, otherwise known as Initialize Hapgood. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
And, of course, I'm joined by, or we, rather, are joined by the dynamic man himself, the man of many talents, Alex, otherwise known as a Nightmare. I was going to say Nightmare Hapgood. Welcome, sir, to the podcast.
Hato.
Well,
should have introduced him. Get rid of him already.
I shouldn't have done
this
that.
Degeneracy can't be allowed online.
It was my mistake. It was my mistake.
The thing is, though, because this is actually the first, actual HD footage of us on the podcast, of course, we've had an internet upgrade. I need to just set the record straight, set the tone. This is what you get from us.
It's
a two-man podcast now. Come on, Matt.
Am I still here, or...?
Yeah, you're here. We'll give it in.
I thought I could drop out. I thought I could live.
We can rename the podcast. Rename the podcast to 2.5 Weebs.
So who's the Weebs?
Well, I count as two, and then between
you're two, and then
no. So one of me's that, and then
I lived in Japan, so I get infected by osmosis.
I guess
the Ari statue's the extra half, yeah.
Except he's the only one that hasn't been to Japan, so he's like the worst.
I know, it's great,
right?
Yeah, no, I am.
But that's why he's actually a weeb, because hasn't actually been there and been a normal human being.
Okay. That's siblings talking. Welcome to the LJL Officially Unofficial Podcast, episode 23. Gentlemen, what is this podcast? Nightmare, what is this podcast? Why are people listening to us right now?
Well, they've probably clicked on a link somewhere, and it's led them through the weirdness of the internet to find somehow this podcast, which covers things about this thing called the LJL, which is the League of Legends Japanese League, which is a professional esports league for the video game League of Legends. It's an esports title, and because there was no English content of it, or at least none which was particularly prevalent within our area of the world, we decided, well, we better help that. So we do ourselves a live cast of the games which are played over there, which is on a weekly, most of the time basis, and then we do this podcast to support that content.
Yeah, well, seems like we're doing a lot. Do we have any affiliation initialized though with Riot or anything like that? We're doing a lot of work for it. We must be getting something for it.
Oh yeah, we're definitely affiliated with Riot. That's definitely the way. No, we're not. As of the moment, Riot have nothing to do with us. Though if they want to change that, they can come and contact us. That'd be great. But yes, no, we do this all off our own. We do it all off our own back. This is all our own stuff. It's all bootleg broadcasts. No piracy involved though.
No piracy involved, sadly. Well, technically, no. Actually, no, it's not. No. They allow it. Damn it. We're not even technically breaking the law. We're not even against it. We're not even criminal of the law. But because of that, all of these views and opinions are of our own. Myself, Mars Swan, Initialize, and then way over on the other side of this screen, it's Nightmare. It also doesn't represent, though, the LJL Officially Unofficial cast itself. This is purely our own point of view, similar to another podcast known as the Pog State, which do a very similar kind of spiel to us.
They do.
But we were doing our podcast before they started doing theirs.
We actually did, and we had I believe we had a podcast. Yeah, and what it does allows it just allows us to be like our own characters. It allows us to be pantomime. No, it's just a big thing. It allows us to kind of be a bit more unhinged. It allows us to be a bit more unhinged, a bit more free-flowing than we would be on an official broadcast.
Yeah.
Lexi, I think Nightmare is trying to cover his bases here and make it appear as though this isn't actually how he is normally. Like, I hate to tell you guys, but it's no pantomime. It's just who he is. Got to deal with it.
Yeah, fuck that.
I mean, I don't get beat when I say fuck, so it's great. Yeah. I mean, I don't get censored, apparently. But none of us get censored here. Nightmare decides to do it for comedic effect more than anything else, really. Obviously, if you want to check out our own social media platforms underneath all of our faces, or it's at Mars1 for myself, at Initialize with a 1 in there, and obviously at Nymera. Also, you can find all of our social media links, as well as all the social media links to the LJL Officially Unofficial coverage and pages down below or in the podcast description. Within that said, you can get this podcast on all major audio streaming platform services. If you want it on another one and we haven't got it there, just reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to do that for you. Gentlemen, we're bringing a podcast halfway through the split, but there's no games.
I know, right?
Was ist das?
It's not quite as bad as last split. Give them that. It's not quite the breaks we had at that point.
No,
so we are
there was
still
some content in there.
It's like, you know, it's like if you had like on the pain scale of like 1 to 10, where 10 is unbearable, 1 is, you know, the one which they give you when they go for like triaging and stuff. Last split was like, oh, for LJL pain, it was like 8. It was really bad. And this one's more like a 4.
The worst part was the mid-split, mid-playoffs break. That was
like 3 weeks.
What do you talk about? Like, you've got things you need to talk about, but you can't.
We somehow found something to talk about, but...
Yeah, go back and watch it. See what we said.
Yeah, see? I'm not sure. It's like,
I haven't gone back.
Very memorable. Very memorable.
Yeah, so memorable, even the people there can't remember it.
Yeah. No, but I don't remember what I had to...
We asked a lot of theoretical questions and did a lot of filler.
I'd be interested to go back to some of those and see if any of our theories ever bloomed into anything now that we're halfway through. Maybe.
Yeah, anyway, we're kind of in that spot again, but luckily this is like our one true filler week. We got like an expectations thing and stuff to set there. But this one we've got some stuff to go through, which is still pretty interesting.
Yeah, we're going to begin off with the main topic being a question for once from Chips Are Tasty, and then we're going to go through our meat and potatoes of this podcast, which is going to be our mid-split MVPs. Along with that, giving our thoughts around each of the lanes, the players that have been voted by us, and our thoughts overall. Also just kind of pulling from outside sources and kind of then just compiling it all together and then giving our overall player of the week.
It'll be the mid-split, the true mid-split MVP. We'll have like an MVP for each role, like a top mid lane, like a mid-split top laner, and stuff like that.
And then our overall.
And then the overall. So the one person above all else, even throughout all the roles, which has been the most valuable player so far this split.
Will we be unanimous like we were at the end? Or will we differ in our own opinions? But as this is a bit different, we're not doing the absolute. This is kind of bringing in some of our interpretations, and we'll get into more of that around how we judge our MVPs on.
It's only halfway through. It's only halfway through the split, which
is
also
over
means
halfway.
So we've had the entire first round robin, and then like another 4 games.
Everyone's had one extra game. Yeah.
So like, and then what that means is that because we are going to bring to you like the total of our Player of the Week's votings throughout the first 4 weeks, the numbers might say something a little bit different to how we feel, particularly because it is only halfway through the split. So we'll have a lot of time to waffle around the points and hopefully give you some context of what we're saying.
Absolutely. With that said, let's get into our first part of this podcast, and it's going to be a question that I imagine, Initialized, you might be interested in discussing this.
All of us have a lot of points on this.
Oh yeah. But Resident DFM Man, who is currently the best analyst on our Discord server, which you can get involved in on our Discord server if you click the link within the description or in the podcast show notes. I don't quite know how people... The link is there. You can join us. Chips Are Tasty asks us, what do you think of the growing competition in the LJL? At least the threat of a non-DFM dominant split for the first time in forever. Correction, forever. Is it DFM playing badly, or have other teams caught up? Now, there's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack
from this. So I would like to begin with breaking down this question to the first point. What do we think of the growing competition in the LJL? The first part of this question. Gentlemen, what do we think so far of this growing competition?
Fantastic news.
Yeah. Well, first off, like, should we define what actually is the competition in the LJL?
Sure.
Presumably for the split, are we? I'd imagine we're saying the 3 teams which are currently above DFM and have beaten DFM. So that's V3, CJ, and Sengoku. Do we say the contest from any of the lower teams as well? Or are we mainly focusing on those 3? What do you reckon, guys?
I think we probably, for me, we have to focus on those 3 with a caveat that someone like Burning Core, but exactly Burning Core.
Well, and Burning Core also beat CGA.
CGA, right? And like, and Burning Core have narrow win conditions, but when they get those win conditions largely in draft, they have got talent to play around it. Are those win conditions frustratingly narrow for them? Yes, and that's why we kind of have this caveat on them. The other one would be something like, if the Jesters can pull back,
if they had their roster change back,
because we can see, we've seen some sparks from that.
I thought you were thinking maybe the Hawks. The Hawks have actually already beaten Burning Core, and they looked pretty good in some of their victory against Burning Core. And I think if Honey gets funneled, there could be a chance against them, right?
But he was my AD carry of the week.
He was both of yours.
Week?
Mine as well.
Yeah, Honey had a really good week. I think the thing for me is that they've kind of been put to the sword by most of the better teams. It's not really been much of a contest. Do I think they are like competition in the LJL? Not really. They're better than they were last split.
But they're right. They're raising the bar of the competition.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
they're better than they were last split. That's
100% that one.
Yeah, I'll agree. At least towards the end of the split, I'll agree.
Yeah.
I will put in a little caveat of my own, where I say they're raising the competition, but actually, if I look a little deeper at 2 of their wins, probably. The win against Burning Core, I put it out there that I think that one was a bit of a gift from Burning Core in the way they drafted. Yuhi on that Ashe as their sole threat was sad to watch.
Yes.
And I think that meant that at least one of the wins from the Hawks has been a little bit gifted. And they also had a game win versus the Jesters, which was a very fast win. Don't get me wrong, and Dashe popped off.
20 minutes, 20 seconds.
And like that in of itself deserves a clap, but there is that caveat that was the Jesters with an emergency roster swap that hadn't had, 2 emergency roster swaps that had not had chance to do anything, and we've seen them level up since. So to me, that's 2 wins which are like, yes, you got those wins and good on you getting those wins. They were slightly gifts there for the taking, though, perhaps.
Okay. The next part of the question is, at least the threat of a non-DFM dominant split for the first time in forever. This is actually really
it's
forever.
Not a threat.
This is
not a threat either. It's happened already.
Yeah.
They've lost 4 fucking games. That's a lot. Insane. They've never lost that proportion of their games in a regular split, ever.
They went 17-4, right?
Yeah, but that was when they had an extra 7 games to play. Remember, this is only a 14-game regular split. That was when it was triple round robin. This is double round robin. They've already lost a quarter of their games, pretty much.
Yeah, and they're never going to be able to recover from their normal win percentage of what was like. What did we say in the previous one? It was like
80% the lowest.
80%, something like that.
Yeah, which is
17-4 was that lowest percentage of DFM wins.
Which is still pretty absurd.
Yeah, and that there's not a threat now. It's that, and this is the lot. DFM have never not been this dominant ever.
No, ever. That's the whole point, right? I mean,
except for, I think you have to go back all the way to 2014 when the league was first starting, and it was like the first tournament. I'm
trying to remember if Rampage finished above them in a regular season once. And in fairness, last
even
summer,
then,
I believe it was CGA that finished above them.
Even then, though, we're talking about splits where they weren't one of the dominant teams. This is now, they're not even a dominant team. The CGA, you can easily argue V3, CGA, and Sengoku have that mantle. They are the dominant teams.
Do we want to backtrack towards them actually, in just terms of like the competition that they're facing? Because the really interesting thing for me is the 3 teams above them have brought this competition to them in very different ways. I look at the top 3 above them, and I wouldn't even say 2 of them play the same style. There are some hallmarks there, maybe between V3 and Sengoku. CJ completely out of left field; they just do what they want. But the other 2 teams, again, they play very different roles with their players there. And that's the thing. Like for DFM to not win against any of them playing diametrically opposed styles, that's part of it you can put on DFM, but for these teams to succeed at those styles against a team we know to have the caliber of DFM, that's huge for the league, right?
Massively true. And like the fact that they are such distinct play styles, it's not everyone copying the same style, and they all look pretty effective. Says strong things for a region that has largely been absent of coaches. Absent of coaches as well is a big one. And we can sort of see that there is kind of unique playstyles emerging for squads where they know their win conditions, they know the way they can play the game and win playing that style or their style, and looking good doing that. That's good news, and I think it does speak to an improved level of play, but also just improved level of backroom staff to help tease out these styles and kind of work to hone them.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but V3 are currently poised to defeat DFM's last split streak.
Yeah.
CGA and Sengoku, at the rate they're going, they could potentially tie DFM's record from last split. They both could tie that record if they both go undefeated, which, in all fairness, isn't impossible for either of these two teams left with the round robins that they have left to go, especially for Sengoku, who don't actually have to play V3 anymore. They've already had those.
That's pretty big.
So they could actually win out and tie with the record that DFM did. And
they've already taken DFM down twice as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So
it's a big thing, really big thing.
They've got to face Crest, which is definitely the big contender against them. But that's the big three. And now we could argue that there is a big three now. There is now DFM burning core, and then the Hawks kind of scraping maybe above sometimes, and sadly Rascal Jester Axis have got substitutes, and those substitutes just haven't worked out, really.
No, unfortunately they haven't really.
So
Sengoku do play V3 in the last week 7. They've played DFM twice. They do need to play DFM V3 once on the last week. So DFM are V3 because every team has played one opponent twice now because the first round robins ended and they had one extra game. Sengoku have played DFM and they did take that win. So if you look at their strength of schedule compared to the other teams, they probably have a weaker strength of schedule compared to the other guys. So yeah, it still stands, but they potentially might have to buck up some ideas for the V3 game to end out their split.
Yeah. And I mean, we're going to be seeing a lot, but then the end of the question is it DFM playing badly? Or have the other teams caught up? And, well...
Okay.
I actually really want to get your opinion on this, Lexi, because particularly in regards to... Do you think this DFM, as they're playing right now, are playing better or worse than DFM in spring or in playoffs? You can separate those two out. So you can say
they're just they're kind of mid-tier now at best.
Yeah.
They're not doing rotations how they used to be doing it. They're drafting worse. They're doing multiple amateur mistakes, especially this week. Week 4 we saw Ebby and Steel. Maybe some of the best players. Actually, no, I would argue maybe
I think Ebby is the best Japanese player ever.
Yeah. And you could argue at some point, Steel was taking almost every week for us in MVP outside of Boogie and Blank sometimes. Steel is definitely one of the best junglers in the region, and now they're just making almost what we'd see. Well, arguably, the kind of stuff that we would also cast on our other stuff. They're making kind of level of mistakes that you would expect from amateur teams that have only started working with each other for about the last few weeks or months.
I mean,
it's uncanny. I don't like it.
Yeah, and I've done a bit of VOD review of a couple of the games. Particularly, I went through Sengoku DFM, and I know I said a lot about how Sengoku played well in terms of I really liked how Pyrian and Blank played that game, and of course Afman ended up winning out the 1v1. Afman's done really well to split, by the way, guys, particularly against Debbie, someone he's had such a bogey against.
It feels good, man. It feels like that redemption arc finally.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Well, he's finally breaching out his champion pool, which is big.
But there's some really big stuff on DFM are playing some really cookie cutter. Let's layer the CC comps, and they're playing stuff like Xerath into Pantheon. That was the one against Sengoku. There are a couple of fights where Gang is flashing in or Steel is flashing in, and there's just no follow-up because they've gone too far. They just don't know their distances or their timing. They're just not aware of the spacing. And for a team that's won the league so much, that's not, I mean, compared to spring finals where they were just so on point and everything. I think so. If we're asking about this, again, the diametrically opposed things, is DFM playing badly or the team's getting better? If we just take our DFM playing badly, and it doesn't have to be either or, it's probably going to be a bit of both, guys. DFM, I think, definitely are playing worse.
Yes.
And you can see that demonstrably in some of the mechanical plays, even without going into the theoretical, philosophical side of League of Legends of what are they doing with this comp? Why are they picking this? Are they just having the wrong read on the meta? Regardless of that, the things which they are playing, they're not playing to the right extent, to the full extent that they were in previous splits.
Yeah, because I mean, the really big example in that last week was Steel's Jarvan getting a 3-man Cataclysm, but it was a screen and a half plus away from any of the damage. Say
against people that could get out.
Yeah, against people who could get out, and the Aphelios was a flash and a walk away from being able to do anything, let alone Moonlight Vigil or anything.
Yeah.
And that kind of meant
that was versus Sengoku, the second game versus Sengoku.
Where Appamen had a ridiculous Mordekaiser game and the likes of it. And Ebby had a rough game, but Yutapon was looking good. Had got his items, was in a great spot, and the engaged to follow up kind of disconnect that we've seen a lot from DFM around that sort of 15 to 20 minute markers over a few weeks was really concerning, because like on paper by itself with no one else involved would be an okay engage. You look at the rest of it and go, well, there's no follow-up. That suddenly takes that whole what looks like a nice thing into really poor kind of communication come awareness, I guess, because you can't necessarily communicate that all that easy, because all you say is going. You've got to be aware, if you're saying going, the rest of your team has to be around, has to be in position to follow up, and that's just like game state knowledge, right? And that feels a bit off.
I mean, for me, a huge part of that is we could easily be having a big four. We could easily be having a disconnect between the top four and the bottom four. It's similar to what we were speculating on our podcast, where originally last split we were like, well, it's going to be 3-3-2. And we were partly correct about that 3-3-2. Not quite on the teams, but they did develop a 3-3-2, which was really interesting. Coming into this split, we were expecting there was going to be two kind of tiers this time. We were less about 3 tiers. This time we thought it would even out to be 2. This time we're getting 3 tiers, and you could almost argue DFM and now DFM's not in the top tier.
And this might come across as there's I'm just going to expand on this, right? Because there's a lot of people who are diehard DFM fans will be like a bit up in arms about this thing. Oh, but aren't they still playing really well and stuff? They are still, in terms of they're only a couple of games behind some of these teams, but they haven't taken a game off of the teams above, the 3 teams above them. And that's a really big telling thing, right? They haven't beaten V3, haven't beaten CGA, and they've lost to Sengoku twice. If I was going to put them as a top team, you have to take at least 1 game off them, guys. Yeah. That's a big thing, because if you just take it, if you're punching down, that's fine. But now there are people at your level and above it. That punch down don't work. And that's what's making me worried, and that's why I can't put them as a top tier team in this split so far. I can't.
And I kind of agree. That's to said, that's kind of taking things
without historical context.
Without historical context, and there's still half a split to play out. So, do I expect DFM to pull it back? Absolutely. I think you would be remiss to think otherwise, just in terms of how they've done it before. Plus, there's some let me finish this one up, and
I'm putting my hand up. I'm waiting.
Okay. So then the other one would be actually they have got a lot of stats which do look good. So their first blood rate, their early gold leads, their first tower rate is very, very high. They are getting out to early leads pretty much every game. What is happening though is they are losing their gold lead around 15-minute marks, and they are losing a lot of heralds. Their herald fights are atrocious.
Yeah, go
really bad.
If you have any website or Game of Legends, which is what we use, is really good to check out the head-to-head specifically between Sengoku and DFM. Look at the early first bloods and look at where they're going, and look at where the heralds are going. Sengoku get all the heralds and all the first towers, all the heralds, and DFM gets first dragon and first blood, and it just isn't helping.
First towers, yeah. First dragon, first blood, first tower, and they're just throwing it in the mid game with some weird team fights and bad plays around herald multiple times.
And it's not ideal. And something that I was putting my hand up to say is, but they're going against V3 next week. In my head, that's already a loss. And then they're playing against the Hawks. And the Hawks, depending on how they play, if they play like they're playing last week, it might not be an easy game. It might
if
be.
If DFM draft themselves a shit comp and no win condition again,
and Honey gets a Felios, then it could be just that's it. He's similar to Yuhi, but not to the extreme sense, I would say.
Yeah, not quite
but at best, then I'm saying that in my head, and this is objectively because I want to get predictions correct, obviously, that I'm expecting DFM to go 1-1. I didn't play. In my head, I was like, I think DFM might go 0-2, but I don't know. I couldn't say that after the week we saw. It's really worrying, and I'm just worried.
Don't have a lot of hope for the Hawks. I will say that I really don't have a lot of hope for the Hawks.
Yeah, but they've been drafting okay. They just play on the riff kind of card terribly, which is a thing. Obviously, I like talking about. But then I do think week 6 is going to be a 2-0 week for them. So it's
it's always a little bit of both. But yeah, the Hawks is more about their rotations and where they're just randomly ending up on the map. Aramic is not playing particularly well. So, whereas their comps, if you give their comp to V3 Sengoku, their win rate would be pretty good, right?
Well, they play almost very similar comps to V3 and Sengoku. Yeah. They just can't execute it at all, and their macro is
outside of mid lane. They play more carries in mid lane.
True.
Corki, which is absolutely not an ace champion, but
true. That's more of a CGA thing.
Yes, it is. Yeah, very true. Or Sengoku.
They're trying to slam them both together a little bit.
Kind of, yeah.
So, how would we, in a one sentence each, to end this? I'm going to go to you. I'll start first, actually. I'll start first. If answering this question from chips are tasty, which I will agree with you, Nymera, they are tasty. Though we're talking about chips like we eat chips, obviously, like French fries.
I had
chips.
satay fries the other day. Ooh. So nice, like peanut.
Though I'm assuming this person might be talking about chips as in
crisps. Yeah.
No, chips. I was assuming like chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, I was expecting like
what?
crisps.
That was a reach. I wasn't expecting that.
No, because they do the milk and chips. It's a thing. I heard I've heard people say that.
I'll take your word on it.
I don't know where they're from. They might just be like chips
could be anywhere.
Like us. It could be anywhere. If I was to say, is DFM playing badly, or if the other team's caught up, I think DFM are playing maybe the worst I've ever seen from them. And I think at the same time, a lot of teams have leveled up about 2 or 3 levels higher than I was expecting coming into the split. And DFM weren't prepared for that. So that's how I would answer that. Let's go over to Nymera. Cool. You next.
If I was going to be completely non-committal, and this is in a very non-satisfying way, I'd say it's a bit of both. I think that DFM... I'm going to caveat Lexi's point and say it's the worst they've ever played domestically. Internationally, they've had some pretty shocking moments.
They're garbage international.
And the thing for me is that there's a lot of things which they are a team which has been notoriously good at prepping for splits, and they came in really cold. Really, really cold. And maybe this break will help them, but they're not playing well right now, and that needs to happen. That is no longer an optional, maybe they'll do well if they come in. It is just they need to, otherwise they will not. And also, the other teams are playing well. It is very good. I think V3 are playing better than... I would actually say V3 are playing better than DFM last split. I would actually go out and say that.
Probably.
Yeah.
And also, that's kind of on the caveat of... summer teams tend to be stronger than spring teams across the world. So I think V3 are playing better. CGA and Sengoku, I don't think they're as good as spring DFM if you look at them in the finals and stuff, but I still think that they're better than DFM right now. And they maybe could have taken more games off of DFM from if they got into those playoff kind of states. So it is a bit of both. I don't think it's as clean cut. We talked about it in the context, but yes, it is a bit of both.
Not really a sentence, but very diplomatic. I can appreciate
I
that.
You
wanted to get everything under the umbrella a little bit. I can appreciate that. Go on, initialize. Go on, initialize. Oh, no, apologies. It's a podcast. Content. King. I'm okay with that. Initialize. Can you end us out with your closing thoughts?
So I think I agree with both of my co-hosts here. I think that's a pretty spot-on read with where we've got DFM. I will add that caveat for DFM that there are things they can take home and say, yeah, we're doing that right. Like, they are getting good early leads. They are finding good tower, good first drag, good first bloods, good, like, lots of ways to get leads. Hell, they have pushed V3 harder than any other team in the league right now. They very nearly won that game versus V3 the first time out. So there are things which you can go, yeah, we're doing this right. And that should probably give fans hope, especially now with this break, that they can look to take the things that are going wrong, maybe look at those heralds, look at those mid-game team fights, maybe look at your drafting a little bit as well, and fix up the very glaring obvious issues, because actually there are a lot of things you're doing right as well, and that potentially could give people a bit of hope.
I can give you an answer in 3 words. Yes and yes.
Yes and yes with multiple asterisks that reference that you need to go to page 235 for where it's like 10 pages long with
That's the clip. That's the clip.
Yeah. Yes,
that's the question, that's the answer. Yes and yes.
We added context, that's what we did.
Sure. Dear listener and gentlemen, we're going to move over to our next main topic over here, and that's going to be our mid-split MVP. Obviously, we did cover it in the introduction of the podcast, but what this is going to be is we have tallied up, or actually rather, Nymera tallied up all of our votes from our Players of the Week that we've done, which is a document that we try to keep consistently updated. Sometimes we forget, so we have to go through old document histories and find it, but we're able to do it. And what we've done is, Nymera has tallied them all up so we can see it for each of our roles. We are then going to cover that in our respected roles, as we each have our individual lanes that we always talk about for our MVP. We're going to give our points, and then we're going to have a bit of a conversation around each of these MVPs, thinking, do we agree that they are the outright MVP if they've got the most votes? If they're tied, Where do we think they are? And we'll go over that as and when it comes. Gentlemen, I'll begin us off in that top lane. Let me pull up my notes as well for the top lane. Right, so in the top lane for our weeks of votes, we have 5 votes over for Apperman, 3 votes has been given to Ebby, 3 votes has been given to Nap, and 1 vote has been given to Paz. Now, for me, I think Paz should maybe be a lot higher on that list. I think not enough votes have been given, but I think that's hard due to the competition. I think it's also sad that Ray Farkey hasn't had a nod yet so far. Cog as well, could deserve something. And yeah, I would agree though, Apperman probably has been also the best top laner outright for me. I agree with how we voted so far. There is definitely some tendency to maybe give it to a few of the other top laners. I'm sad that I haven't given it to Ray Farkey, as I normally was the one that would just go, screw it, Ray Farkey. But he's had okay weeks.
He's not been as explosive as in spring.
A couple Maokai games in there, which are probably...
Yeah, a couple of Maokai games, which are kind of hard to make yourself look good on. But he's been playing the role pretty well, but this team's not really been about him. If you were to ask me whether I agree with those votes, tentatively, yes. Actually, I think that Ebby and Nap have both been instrumental to their teams, but Apperman has not had the dud performances that Ebby has had, even though Ebby arguably had the strongest game of a top laner on that set that one time versus Axis.
Yeah, sure.
I think that Apperman winning the 1v1 versus Ebby in 2 games is huge, and that's what tips him. And like for him, the second game versus DFM, legitimately that was top diff. He just Mordekaiser'd his way to a victory there. I think, Apperman would be my top laner of the mid-split. I think mid-split top laner.
Like, I'm agreeing with Nightmare. I think that's very smart. Pretty good way of putting it. I'll add in as well that I think Sengoku Gaming have largely been the team that has played best around top lane as well. Specifically, and it's not just Blank coming up to help, it's Pyrian roaming up quite a lot as well. And I remember the one Gangplank game versus the Hawks where Apperman's GP went off tank GP and was just detonating people with a little bit of assistance. He got Spirit Visage as well on that. You know, like, there's been a few games where I've gone, they have really played very hard around top and made it work.
I want to throw out a stat there which will help me back up this kind of context, right? So if we're talking about Ebby and Nap being the contenders, so Ebby's KDA was 2.7, Nap's KDA was 3.4. And this is, with their losses involved and everything. Sure. Paz on an undefeated team is on 5.5. Apperman is the highest KDA top laner. Isolated deaths involved in everything at 5.7. He has over double Ebby's KDA over these 8 games. That is huge for me. And he's not just randomly throwing away his lead.
Check where he was in spring, where his KDA in spring was atrocious.
Pretty bad.
That's why partly I was thinking that's kind of crazy. I think Paz should be a lot higher on this list. I think 1 is slightly low, but I also think part of that is we also kind of look at it and go, well, Paz did fine this game. He went 0-10 on Ornn. He did good. He didn't die. He gave his team upgrades and did good team fighting work, and he was exactly what they needed. It wasn't flashy, and I think maybe that's how sometimes the MVP votes do go for us, because it is personal opinion at the end of the day.
That's the thing, right? Well, another thing, so Ebby has the most solo kills of anyone, I think, at 5. But you look at, actually, Paz and Nap are at 3. They're not actually that far behind. Apperman's only had the 1 solo kill, but then again, he plays a lot of Aatrox, and he does tend to be focused on quite a bit. So just kind of backing up the stats there, this is why kind of just form the picture.
Absolutely. Well, I think we all agreed that Apperman is still the reigning king at the moment in the top lane. Obviously, we'll revisit this whole list and everything, and maybe even our thoughts when we do a recap at the end of the regular summer split. Initialize. Sir, you are our jungle man, our resident in the jungle. Would you do me the honours, nay, the pleasure, of running us through the junglers and your jungle thoughts?
Why, thank you, Mr. Mouse Swan. It would be my pleasure. And of course, for the jungler, we have Boogie at 5 votes for the players of the week. It was Blank at 3, Once at 2, and Steel also at 2.
Okay, and do you have who you would be, some of your thoughts in regards to those votes?
So I think that's probably fair. There are some people on there who've been a little bit more inconsistent. So say someone like Steel, but I think when say someone like DFM have been doing well, it's been on the back of Steel putting out some really good performances. Even like I remember his Pantheon games, which they've lost, he still looked like the one person making decent plays.
I agree.
That's not always looked brilliant, and say that Jarvan game versus Sengoku Gaming was a bit inelegant, I think we'll say. At the other end though, Boogie has just been so good. He is the highest KDA jungler in the world, period, right now.
Yeah, 17.4 or something.
Just absurd. He had a 40 KDA on week 4, like where he went 9-0-9 on Lee Sin, 11-0-11 on Graves. Like that kind of thing. We just go, well,
adding out the stats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Namera, what's your thoughts on junglers at the moment?
It has to be between Blank and Boogie, all things said and done. Once is kind of the dark horse. He's had some really hard carry performances, but it's not been consistent enough and not on a large enough champion pools for me to really consider him to be the mid-split jungle MVP.
Put a pin in that for me, Lexi, because I do want to come back.
Which would you like me to
once?
So you guys finish up, but I'm yeah.
Sure, yeah. I can do that.
So it is between Blank and Boogie, and they're not so diametrically opposed as it might seem. Blank doesn't index so much into the solo kill dueling kind of stuff, but he's definitely up there in terms of pressure, and he's probably, well, he is the most mid lane centric jungler of any of our teams. If you look at the heat map of where they are at like between 1 to 4 minutes, he's very much around Pyrion, shoring up that laning phase. So part of me would be like, ooh, maybe there's like a chance I give it to Blank, but it is Boogie. Boogie has just been ridiculous, just on everything. He's been doing it on multiple different champions like Trundle, Graves, Nidalee, all the works really. The guy's just insane.
For me,
all I can say on that.
For me, I'm a little bit disappointed he's only got 5 votes, frankly. Yeah. I think he could have definitely stolen a few from each of these junglers. Granted, Blank did get outright 3 votes in the first week, which does help pad his stats, but since then, he's not gotten a nod even once, and I don't even think he's been much in our contention. He did get an honorable mention, I believe, in week 3.
Like he's been good to great, but there's just been other people who've been like throwing out the flashy performance.
Exactly.
Well, the thing is that like if someone's been voted above him, he's just below them. He's never been out of contention.
Sure, but Boogie for me is just outright the best jungler in the LJL, and maybe one of the best junglers in the world. And it's a little bit crazy that he's not getting even more votes, especially as we go through this list. You are going to hear of players that have far more votes than him, and I'm almost a little bit disappointed in us that maybe our personal opinion is coming out, or maybe the level of jungler in the LJL is just really good at the moment, right?
I think actually, well, going back to top laners, I'm like, there's a load of people I could give an honorable mention to. I go to jungle, I'm like, there's still a lot of people I can give a lot of honorable mentions to. And this is why I wanted to do it in this format, because I looked at these votes, and I'm like, wonder how much of an argument we're going to have about this, because Biggie's been really, really good.
Speaking of arguments, can I start one now?
Yeah, go for it. Go for the once.
Because actually, I think once would be my jungler of the split thus far.
Okay.
And that's even so saying that I think Boogie has been arguably but like, just flat out, Boogie is the best jungler. Do I think he is the MVP jungler?
Okay.
I might take that back, because I think Burning Core are once or die at the minute. And I think in terms of most valuable player to their squad, once is that right now. He has been so pivotal to the way that Burning Core are playing right now that I struggle to take it away from him, just because of like that.
Yeah, and you're entitled to that as well. You are entitled to
your
opinion.
It's like the argument of why would you not vote for a C9 player for Player of the Week in NA? That's been the argument over on Twitter for that, right? It's the same kind of thing with this Boogie thing.
I mean, it's also personal opinion, and I mean...
It's criteria.
I also just think V3 having an undefeated streak, Boogie having the raw stats, and also, other players definitely have narratives and stories. That I totally can abide by. And like, once has almost taken that mantle from Ray Farkey, which for Burning Core, and is that player that they can almost shine back to, as Ray Farkey's had to take more of a steps to the side and play more tank roles. It's really nice, but for me, it's still got to be Boogie. So for me, it's Boogie and okay. So 2 for Boogie, 1 for Once.
I just like the amount Once has had to step up to get it. Like he has been impressive. To me.
I think this is where we see like the difference in criteria, where it was like the old school NA MVP voting of do you vote for Bjergsen? If you have a dominant team, how much does everyone else's good performances detract from someone's MVP chances? Because let's be honest, V3 have got a lot of good players on their team. We talked about Paz being potential for top lane. We'll talk about some more of their members as we come on as well. But does that detract from Boogie? For me, it doesn't, because so much of it starts and ends with Boogie. I mean, remember the Axis game where he just walks in, steals the buff, walks out.
Well, they also just go, all right, guys. So against Axis, they're like, all right, so if 3v5 we can win this. All right, it's winnable.
Versus, and that was the one where literally just like
they lose 1 player.
And then there was like, and in that same game, it was like Galio versus Corki, horrible matchup, and Nidalee just overturns that matchup. He's been doing that on multiple champions, multiple games. He's been doing it. And this is the big thing for me. Once has been doing it on like 2 champions, right? Big has been doing it on absolutely everything. Lee Sin, Trundle, Echo.
I mean, Once has done it on Echo, he's done it on Kindred. We know he's got a good grade. He's done it on Lee Sin.
His Lee Sin has been failing a little bit, though. That's the thing for me.
Yeah,
it's not Boogie's Lee Sin or Blank's Lee Sin.
No, I get it. But like the thing for me is like Once has got like these 2 champions. I'm like, wow, these are really good. And the other one's like, hey, that's pretty good. Boogie, everything he plays, I'm afraid of. So I'm like, oh god, this guy.
That's a fair cop.
We've seen three champions from Once so far, and Boogie's shown us 5. They've had crossover. The only champion
Lee Sin
they haven't crossed over with is that Xin Zhao. Oh no, 2 champions actually. He's played 4. Once has played 4 champions. He played that Xin Zhao. He has played also Kindred, and Boogie is yet to show us the Kindred yet. But we all know he'll run over, or maybe he'll play anything. Or maybe he's like, oh, I don't want to cheat. Maybe not dying because of Land's Respite, so I'm not gonna do it, guys. I can't have a Zhonya. No. I've got to only buy stopwatches and just destroy everybody.
Get the actual Zhonyas. Get the stasis.
Yeah.
Plus, like, Kindred's a little bit more fragile on an invade than something like a Graves Release In, who can get out a little bit easier sometimes.
But then he also played Trundle, who can have a horrendous early game versus some junglers. And just
but the thing is, particularly with that Trundle game, again, he like upset mid lane just completely against the flow of the game, where because it was against Sengoku and Pyrion was playing Zoe. And before that game, I was talking about Pyrion just being so hard to gank, and this guy's such a great mid laner.
Kayn.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? They banned out so many champions, and they got Boogie onto somehow another good jungler for him, and he just ran over the whole game, but ganked everyone. And this is the thing, right? Boogie's performances versus the top teams has been really good too. Maybe outside of that DFM game, and even then, his team fighting was really good in that game too, even though he didn't find stuff early. But yeah, for me, Boogie's still been just such a high level of player.
Once's stats also, when you just look at it, is kind of absurd sometimes. Some of his stats are just so good, and it's like, man, if you compare that with the level of what the rest of his team is doing, it's like, hello Darkness, logic, right? My old friend.
No, except for Ray Farkey, actually. He's 3 and 5. Yeah, they're 3 and 5, and he's got those stats. Like, that's impressive.
That's a big thing. Yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah. So
totally. That's why it's another thing for Afferman, right? Even though they've lost like a couple of games, like.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I think it's about time we move to our resident mid laner, man who loves the women with 8.5 tails, as I believe the legend goes. Nymera, would you like to run us through the mid laner votes and your thoughts around our mid laners?
Okay, so I'm going to go from bottom to top in my order. So at 2 votes between us, Pyrion got those, and Ace had 3.
And then with 7 votes at the pinnacle of the podium of the mid lane, it is our lord and our shining star, Arya.
And
I made a mistake giving him that.
Yeah, you really fucked that up.
Why did I give him that?
It's because I can praise this mid laner of Arya yet again. He's had this guy just carries his team by the absolute scruff of the neck over the finish line. And as much as I think the mid lane talent pool has been pretty high this split on the whole, this guy's shown loads of different champions, had good performances on basically all of them, and he's just really core to CGA.
And we've also voted pretty unanimously a lot of the time that Arya is our best. If it on a week, he's taken 6 full votes because we've all just voted for him from week 1 and week 3. Like, yeah, all right, go on. Tell us why Arya's the best.
Well, why is he the best? He's got the largest champion pool of any player in the LJL.
1.
He performs on pretty much all of them.
2.
He is winning every laning phase bar none, pretty much. He
3.
still has more to show as he hasn't played stuff like his Silas yet. And he's
4.
had 2 unique champions, which we've never seen from him this split alone, and he's carried on
5.
both of them. So,
okay, that's 5 reasons, and you didn't even bring in stats.
Yeah, that's what Jorab said.
Which is absurd. He's just outright the best mid laner, and there's not even a question now. There was,
I don't think so.
There were maybe a bit of questions going in spring. Like sometimes he was
Pyrion,
the best, like Pyrion and Cyros to a degree, because Cyros was still playing
he did.
and it was kind of like, well, he's definitely very, very mechanically good, but is that enough for CGA?
I think he was throwing games as well.
Definitely. Well, he was getting himself in spots that it was
he
all
had to be
or
the one to
nothing.
throw if they lost. Yeah,
and
like the one Rascal Jester game with the Magi's on the Silas. But like even then, the only reason they were in that spot is because he had like 11 kills or some shit. Like, I think
granted, they actually
logic,
did do that again with the Kassadin game.
He did. Yeah, and he
ran over it. Yeah.
And the thing for me about Arya is that if we twin the arguments that we've had for, so say Sam's argument for once in the jungle, and then the other stuff, like, it's not just that he is mechanically the best at the high level. In terms of his value to his team, CJ is like just
not a team
all about Arya more often than not. And in fairness, the rest of the team has stepped up this split. But this guy is still the most valuable player on his team. He's just that good.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, like, okay, so who were the other people on CJB that could contend? Naps had a really good week, generally been a great weak side top laner. Aside from versus, where was it V3 early or DFM early? Where he just got died a lot.
Burning Core with the Cho'Gath he played.
That's right. That's the one I'm thinking of. Like, where like, okay, that wasn't fantastic. Gango as well has had games where he's been a brilliant AD carry. In other games, just like
he's been abused quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's been a bit back and forth.
Arya
has consistently, Arya's not had a bad game yet. I think.
Yeah, and other members like Unica and Grendel, while they sometimes have 1 or 2 good games, it's also very hit and miss with some of these players. Whereas Arya is just that rock that will almost always win lane, and through winning lane will win another lane through it because he's just
another game.
So
through the game.
The games you can point out are maybe so the Aurelia game versus Burning Core, where he was still winning the 1v1, but effectively he drew so much pressure that you had to have like 2-3 people roaming into his lane. But then the team fight, the comp did not help Aurelia team fighting into stuff like a Karma and a Galio that could disengage him. I don't think he had a great game there. I think that's the one game I'd be like,
a really good shout.
Then was versus Sengoku on the Corki. He didn't carry as hard as Gango. He was still a late game Corki in that game, and he did some good stuff, but he wasn't quite as explosive as the other 2 games. So there may be 2 out of the 8 where I'm like, maybe whatever. The other 6 are just crazy.
1 was good and 1 was meh.
Yeah, and the Zoe game versus V3, they lost that one as well. But it's not like... So, I mean, they didn't even lose the Corki game, and he did really well in that game, and he took up a lot of skill shots. But the Zoe game versus V3, he was still the only person putting out any pressure on the map. And I even voted MVP for that week, mainly because of his other game. But that game, I was like, hey, the guy's still putting out pressure in a situation where maybe he shouldn't. I mean, like, and as much as I am biased, I do think that his mechanical skill and the way he handles games and draws pressure to himself has been very, very valuable to CGA.
It has to be said, he is just the best, and CGA, as you said earlier, is nothing without him. Really,
pretty
much. They are nowhere near going to be the level of where they are in the standings. They wouldn't potentially even be competing off to go into the Gauntlet match or the Juggernaut match rather, and everything else at the moment. Like they are just on that level. So
I think the turning point for me is that if you put this guy into any other team, would they be better or worse? And every answer I can think of is better. Everyone on paper. Maybe DFM because they play a weird style compared to him. Maybe that. And even then, they could probably just
figure it out, right? That's what you're going to do. You spend a split where you just figure it out, come into summer, and you just start smacking people around. And maybe that's exactly what CGA were doing coming into this split. They were like, all right, guys, spring split, we're going to try a bunch of stuff out and see how far we can go. Summer split, all right, what worked, what didn't work, spam it. Okay, Arya, hard carry, everyone play around it. Nap, start being a secondary carry, everybody else help them. And
something like the thing which has been actually a really big thing for CGA. Remember that they had, like, going into playoffs last split, they had 0 wins on red side. They're mainly playing red side this split and giving counterpick to Arya, and it's working really well for them. Really well.
Yes.
Small change like that, huge results have been coming through it, and that's just a small thing of just going, I'd like to play red side. Every team's like, okay, and then they're like, all right, so we have to we lose a Various ban, but we always get that side selection and counter pick for Arya. And
Varus is not really going to be picked ban after this patch too, so it might be a very interesting thing.
Yeah, like I also feel that Arya is probably the player with the best power to counterpick in the league right now.
With his chance,
he can play so much stuff.
It was between him and Ninja, and Ninja's not playing right now. And
also Ninja.
Give DFM given time to prep, Saros comes up with something weird. There are these guys who do that, but
I don't want to spend too much more time on this because we need to go through the other roles as well. But in terms of counterpick, say that. But what are the better power picks for if you had to first pick for a player, who's the best person for that in terms of power pick? They win lane. Ebby on set, Arya and LeBlanc or Zoe. That's pretty much what I can think of.
Some of the carries on Aphelios or Ashe probably as well.
Maybe.
I could see
you just ban out all the count. You just ban Ashe and just pick Aphelios and ban Ezreal, and you probably win lane.
Sure. So I think AD carry is a pretty strong option for
AD carries, but then it's for anyone else, it's pretty much
I mean, the big
set Ebby's set and then Arya's LeBlanc.
That's fair.
Yeah. I can't think of anything. Maybe now Ace's Galio.
Maybe Pyrian Zoe as well. But even then, that didn't work versus V3.
No, it didn't. I mean, that's why I was thinking Ace's Galio, because it's such a crutch for them at the moment.
True. That's
Wukong, I suppose, or Volley.
But it's not like he wins lane with it. So.
Oh, Naps Wukong. Yeah.
Oh, Naps Wukong.
Naps Wukong.
There's a couple of we haven't seen a lot of Volley.
Apperman's Yorick.
Apperman's Aatrox.
Ooh, actually, Apperman's Aatrox.
It's the Drake meme. Apperman's Yorick. Apperman's Aatrox.
But now it's you don't want to play Aatrox. You meant to just play Wukong. Oh, Apperman can play.
He's actually pretty good at that.
He can play that. He can play Wukong actually really well. Yeah. It's like they're very similar champions in ways. So it's crazy, gentlemen.
Should we move on?
Yes, absolutely. Let's move on to our bot laners of the week. Right. So this is where I have probably my second most amount of notes. So let's go through this. So our bot laner votes are... I'm going to follow Nymera's lead with going least to most. And that's we've got Art with 1 vote. And then tied with 3 players, we have Honey with 2, Gango with 2, and Yutori Muashi with 2. But then we have one person who in very first place, Archer, with 5. No one was really surprised that Archer had the most, I think. And yeah, he's currently the best in his role. And while others may come closer or win in one stat, he just beats them on every other axis. If they go, oh, I get you more CS like Honey, he's like, that's nice. I get more gold. I use it more efficiently. I always get you more gold by 15 minutes. I get more CS. Even if you out CS me, I still get more gold than you. It's like, it just doesn't matter. He just finds every way to find an axis in. And yeah, he's, honestly, I'm going to say it early on, he's my MVP. Easy for me.
So I will put this out that I also think that Archer has been phenomenal, but I think, as is often the case with the bot lane, it is the bot lane duo of V3 that have been
synergy phenomenal. And also the other player.
Archer and Reiner as a pair have been utterly dominating everyone they go against. The Ezreal Yuumi bot lane where he goes Ignite on the Ezreal versus...
Yeah, that's the big game for me. They screwed over Sengoku bad.
They slapped him down. We saw the game versus CJ with a game plan, but it was also off the back of the bot lane playing the early lane so well to put them in a diveable position. There's just things where Archer has been really, really good, and his Aphelios in teammates. Hell, go check out that one where they turned it around versus DFM.
Oh, that was
a number of clutch plays in that for a number of players.
No, guys, we're actually going to have a live stream where we VOD review that game, because there is so much I want to point out in that team fight, because every single member of V3 did something special in that fight. Really, really good. Really. I'm going to straight up say I have no qualms with Ouch being mid-split bot laner. The guy's just so good. And particularly when he's flashing forward on champions which have that much carry potential, and he's just consummating that and saying look, this is what I can do, this is the stats I've got, even when I'm behind in the game like in DFM. It's just so good. I will say one person who hasn't got any votes on it here and does deserve a mention is Utapon. Utapon has been the best performing member of DFM this split, even though they've been underperforming. Utapon has been really, really consistent, and sometimes it's kind of just masked with our disappointment with DFM as a team. Utapon has been playing really well, very well.
But that's almost a kind of mantra of where DFM have been playing and where they are picking up their wins. It's all been punching down, and we're less impressed with that. If you want to punch down and get an MVP nod, you normally have to do something like Boogie did and just go, I'm going to go undefeated, I'm going to go 909, and you have to just show dominance. DFM... aren't really doing that
so
sometimes.
As a team, I agree, but
and
with
that's why I don't
Utapon
think Utapon hadn't had a nod. That's why I don't think he's been ever given a nod.
I also think that a lot of his good performances actually have been in the games that they've lost. So against against V3 on his Ashe, basically every fight was, can you stop Utapon popping the fuck off? And there was like huge plays to shut him down, but they had to be huge plays because he was playing so well. You look at their game versus Sengoku, and a lot of the time it was Utapon like getting huge advantage over Yutori Miyashi as well. But like again, these are games which they eventually lost, and then also this is the point about it being like a mid-split kind of thing where you're saying like, okay, right, we've only had like 4 weeks of games, which is still a fair amount, but like with the height of performances we've had from some of these teams, like Gango having those huge moments.
That week, that Utapon did that. We gave Dango Player of the Week, 2 of us. You and me and Nymera, and initially you gave
and rightfully so. And rightfully so. It's just like, much like we were saying with like, we were kind of disappointed with Boogie not having as many votes. I'm sad that Utapon hasn't got at least one. This guy has had a good split so far. Individually, this guy is still a player to carry DFM.
I will also add this in as for, I think this goes for all of us as well, is largely we give MVPs to people who've had 2 good games in a week.
Yes.
And DFM have done a lot of 1-on-1. That always hurts your MVP votes. It's not for a game, it is for a weekend. And with DFM being very, very coin flip on when they're winning. Hell, they went 0-2 in the last week. You know, we had the game where he goes 11-1 and 10 or whatever it was on Ezreal, destroyed the game. And then the game after, it was a quiet one where he just managed to get a lot done. And there's been a lot of that.
And I think that's perfect. Because week 3 is when Art went 1-on-1. Rascal Jesters didn't look great. They looked interesting that week. The same week that DFN also went 1-on-1. So really hammering your point, Art went 6-0-9 against Axis and then 6-4-4 against Crest Gaming Act, and he was the only shining hope outside of Pink's Katarina that week. And that's just showing kind of, I'm backing you up on what you're saying, Initialize, because it's so important to have 2 good games a week. Because if you have one insane game, we're expecting the next one to be at least 2/3 as good as that, if not almost matching
within the ballpark.
It's hard.
No, I just thought I'd put the caveat. Like, in terms of the unsung hero, I do think that if I was going to give like an MVP for each team, for DFM it would be Utapon. This guy has had a good first 8 games.
But we have also mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different AD carries already, so we're starting to get into that territory of just kind of giving token extra ones, right? It's a weird one, right? It's hard to manage it.
Well, I agree with Gango being there. I agree with Art being there. I agree with Honey being on there. Utori is on there for 2 votes from the first week, I think. And I actually think Utori's had a fairly bad
Not had a great split.
I'd agree with you. I totally agree with you. But that first week was really important for them. Yeah. And it was partly on the back because he beat Utapon in lane.
That was huge.
Dude,
in the first game. Yeah, remember there was one where they played the Sen America, I remember.
Yeah, and he went 5-0-11 on Ezreal, and he just destroyed the lane.
Ezreal carried that late game really well. And as much as... again, that was kind of overshadowed a bit by Blank Empyrean doing really well in the mid-jungle, but like...
And Apperman also doing Apperman things on Aatrox.
This is the thing, right? Like, he had a really good game. His team had a great game, though, so...
And like, it was also that week where it wasn't very AD carry focused at all from anybody. So it was like, who else do we give it to? It's like, well,
we have had that a bit.
That's 2 good Ezreal games. I know it was like Ezreal Yumi or whatever. So that kind of like, what, there's this kind of like, well, it was quiet and then he turned up in team fights. Good. But there was no one else who'd stepped up to like really smash off until people like Archer and stuff were doing stuff crazy.
Yes. Well, I think that's enough talk of AD carries for the time being. Let's go over to their unsung heroes that give everything for them. Supports of the week. And Initialize, would you like to run through the votes and then also your thoughts on the supports of this week?
So at 1 vote each, it is Proud and NT. And then at a monumental 10 Player of the Week votes, it is myth, legend,
so
V3's Ryan, who has been utterly crushing this split from the support position.
Holy shit, this guy. Can we just say we all agree and move on?
I'm sad that there is Proud hasn't had more and NT hasn't had more, but yeah, no, Reiner is just on a level that is, he has the 2nd highest KDA in the LJL, behind Boogie.
Yep.
I think, and he's also he's just in the top 25 in the world in KDA in professional play. Like,
actually, let me find out exactly how far.
It's top 20, I think, actually, when we were looking. I think you said it was like 17, Nightmare, when we were chatting about that. But it's something absurd, and like, yeah, he's so good on everything.
If you count out people who've got 2 games or less, he's 9th highest KDA in the world.
Huh. Top 10.
And Boogie has the 6th, so...
And I'm saying this is also from jungle and support positions, which are kind of sometimes the one where you die for your team sometimes, right? And on things like, hell, even things like Lee Sin or Graves, like, if the game kind of goes away from you a little bit, you can be the one dying because you're in the fight.
And put it this way, like, so a lot of the supports with high KDAs will be putting in time on Yuumi over the season. They will have just had it one time or the other. He's had 5 games of Thresh, 2 of Set. They're slightly tanky, don't get me wrong, and it's not something like which can get picked off so easily, but like they're still in the thick of things.
Oh, I mean, his set's really in the thick of things sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. This guy, I mean, there was that one time where there was that one face showstopper he had in one thing where he went down to about 100 HP, but got like a 4-man all haymaker and flashed out. It's like, how does this guy get away with this?
And he did a fantastic, basically circled around the back of a fight versus CGA, snuck into the additional bush that Ocean Drake had got, flash 4-man face break at the whole of CGA, which won them that fight and won them probably the game. Like that kind of thing where I go, the plays this man has been making have been absurd in lane and out. Just genius. Real genius. And I know I'm saying that word a lot, but it's kind of how it feels like at the minute. Every play he feels like is a big brain play.
And it's not like he's only winning at one aspect of the game. He's winning laning phase. He's
roaming,
doing great in skirmishes. His lanterns have been the best in the league. And also, if you look at like his team fighting impact, he has flash to stop TF ports, flash to lock up the AD carry, who's the only person who's going to carry your team. That's the DFM game, both in that game. Just go watch that game. It is absurd. Guy's just making plays, but also doing he's putting in the hard work and doing that benchmark of like the lowest pot. You know, he's doing all the dirty work for his team, and then also doing the special stuff. This guy does everything. He does it all.
And he has a high KDA. He has a high kill participation. He has one of the highest vision scores per minute in the LJL as well.
Yeah,
so he's also playing the support role as well as also just doing everything else that we've already mentioned about breaking teleports, getting the AD carry into awkward spots for the opponent, helping his own AD carry who's played 4 different champions and probably can play more because Archer has never got that Varus, sadly, and now never will. Probably shouldn't.
Probably not.
But it's just crazy what he's been doing, and I can't wait for Reiner to show us the new Thresh skin. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, Spirit Blossom, yeah.
Oh! We'll talk
Sexy
about skins.
Thresh, what can we say?
We'll have to do a skin segment maybe at the end.
New Ari skin. New Ari
I know, boy. He's like pink-haired Ari with blushing cheeks for an icon. That's Nightmare's like wish list ever done.
I have to say though, so going back to the actual content of the podcast, it is very, very surprising that Gang has not had any this support.
Is
this
it?
Split. Not because of in terms of pre-split expectations.
Sure. Okay.
Has he deserved them to split? No, he hasn't, because Rhino has been that good.
And I would argue Proud and NT have had way stronger showings so far.
I think
I'll agree with
in terms
Proud,
of their peaks,
I think NT's been quieter in general, but Sengoku Gaming have not played around bot like at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that. So there was the one TK game, the one Tom Kench game, which Gang had, where he was like resetting aggro and diving really well and using his ult pretty well. I thought that was pretty nice, but like that's kind of it. He's not had those crazy
Thresh
like
games.
The game versus Rascal Jesters in spring, where he gets the 4-man quickness on Rakan and just ends the game off of it. I'm like, where's that Gang been this split? Where's he been? It's not been here.
Have we seen him pick Thresh yet?
Yeah. I'm gonna keep stalling for time. Yes, we have.
He's played Thresh once and lost. He lost on Thresh versus Sengoku.
Okay.
He's aggressively been playing a lot of Bard.
Bard. He's won once. He lost one on Bard. He's won and lost one game each on Tom Kench, and then won one game on Lulu.
His Lulu was actually pretty nice.
Yeah,
in all
was
fairness,
good.
but
his
it was also versus Axes. So
that's why.
And
I'm
that
also
was when the top lane
it
crushed
favorably. And his Tom Kench KDA has been kind of I know you are Tom Kench, you're going to get into the thick of things, but even then, I know a lot of spots. And
the loss on Tom Kench did hurt that KDA, I will say that.
Oh, God,
like,
0-5 versus V3. Yeah.
Well,
Well, remember, actually, if you remember that game started off by... Well, no, that game...
out
pretty
of
much,
position, really.
it was Ebby trying to save... It was Gang trying to save Ebby. He was, like, randomly in the bot side jungle, and then, like, he blows Flash trying to get out and just gets locked up, and it's like, oh, guess it's over.
It was and that's it. But yeah, I think that's an interesting note, as Gang was commonly just our outright support a lot, and something of interest to note is we haven't really had much to talk about when we come to our support MVP a lot of the time, outside of me sometimes just being like, Proud is really good, it's just sometimes and that kind the rest of his team, like, and every other time it's like Reiner.
Just voting against Reiner is in itself controversial. Like, any point, any week. Whereas sometimes Ari's had, like, a Duff game or one kind of mad game, like we said. Boogie has had some competition in the jungle. Top lane's been a bit all over the place.
Archer's
80 carry's been the most diverse, but Archer's been great anyway, yeah. But, like, this is the one thing where, like, we legitimately could have had 12 votes for him, and I wouldn't have been surprised. I actually think because the 2 votes came from you, was it, Lexi? On Odd Week?
I threw one at NT.
Oh, yeah, you threw it 120. Like, I mean, I've voted for Reiner every single time, and I don't regret that.
Week
at
4,
all.
I voted Reiner. Week 3, I voted Reiner. Week 2, I voted for Proud, and that's why
Proud, yeah. And in fairness, he had a good game. No, and in fairness, don't get me wrong.
Partly one of those games for Burning Core. So,
but like, there's never been a week where he's not been in the majority.
Oh no, he always will be, and he's just playing so good. It's one of those things which I'm excited about. Reiner is a Japanese talent. Meaning, moving forward, if a team wants to kind of play a bit diverse or a bit loosey-goosey, they can definitely look and go, especially a Japanese-specific team as I'm talking about here, they can be like, well, we can't get Gang, but Reiner might be on the table we can buy. Bang, put him into a team and you've suddenly got an ace plus to an S plus talent on your team. I don't know if he'll take an international spot, but other international teams should be probably noting him. In all fairness, because of the level he's currently playing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go.
We've got that awkward, like, 0.5 to a second lag, and I'm just like, no. Nymera.
Hello.
Nymera.
Greetings.
Would you do us the pleasure of reading out the overall Players of the Week votes and your thoughts in regards to them?
So, the overall Player of the Week vote tally is, so we're coming in at 1 vote each, is Reiner and Apperman. It's 2, it is Nap and Once, and tied at 3 with no overall leader is Boogie and Blank. So we have 2 tied at 1, 2 tied at 2, 2 tied at 3. And you're going to ask me, do I pick my MVP right now?
No, we can have a conversation first.
Can we have a conversation,
because I've already got my own MVP, and I think Initialize does too. Right, so let's kind of drive this conversation in the correct way. First off, we said Reiner is outright the best support player in the league. No holds barred. We said it wouldn't be crazy for him to have all 12. Seeing 1 for Proud and 1 for NT isn't crazy, but in all fairness, Reiner is just the best. He only had 1. As did Apperman, who we said is the outright best top laner. Also only has 1. And an important missing person from overall Player of the Week, Arya. Again, best mid laner according to us, and we all agreed, no overall MVP vote. What is happening? It's an interesting analysis point, right?
So let's put this out there. If we think about how these Player of the Week votes came in, it's in week where these players went above and beyond in ways that their team would never have won without them. So I'm looking at Nap, where he turns it around versus CJ with that monstrous Ornn game.
Sure.
Like, that kind of thing, that gets him 2 votes. I think me and you voted for him that week, Lexi.
I believe so.
Or it might have been me, but that kind of thing. Or there's like ones where Boogie's just run over a week and go, well, that's 3 votes for him, and that's.
Oh no, it was you and Nymera. I voted for Reiner that week.
Well there you go.
It was week 3 though, but that explains it. When Nap gets 2, Reiner gets 1 there, but even that week, we all unanimously voted for Nap as Player of the Week in the top lane. It's an interesting thing that we keep divulging. We go, oh yes, no, absolutely, Apperman's the best top laner, Ardia's the best mid laner, yet Apperman only 1 vote, Reiner 10 votes and only gets 1 overall one. And
I think this is the demonstration of consistency versus star-studded highlight reel.
Also our favoritism.
A little bit sometimes.
It's up there, yeah. And that shows more when you've got a smaller sample size of just the first half of the split too, which is why I thought this would be a really good podcast topic. So, you've already said your MVP, Lexi, haven't you?
I have not said my overall MVP.
Okay.
But I think it's interesting that if we move up to the very top, blank. Jungler MVP came 3rd, and we said it was a pretty comfortable 2nd place. Three votes, comfortable 2nd, maybe sometimes contended with the others that we've mentioned, but Boogie is still outright the first place jungler, tying with Boogie, who we've said is just maybe the best jungler in the LJL and maybe one of the best in the world at the moment. I said so.
Yeah, no, I kind of with you. He's been very, very good.
My overall MVP player is going to be Boogie, because I can't get away from those raw stats, and I can't also get away from... He basically does what Arya does, but from the jungle,
map.
and he's everywhere. Arya's normally almost everywhere, but he has to spend the first 10 minutes in his lane normally to get some gold. Boogie doesn't care about that. He's roaming from basically minute 4, because when I showed Nymera the heat map stuff, it was so dynamic. Yes, he sometimes
also
plays
on Game
around...
Legends.
Yeah. Yes. We're not sponsored. Yet.
No, but they're really
Such a good website.
We should maybe talk to them at some point. Anyway, not a bad idea actually. But this is the kind of thing where you look at it and go, heat map, it's so diverse and dynamic, and then you go, well, he just doesn't always play the same way. His jungle pathing's different, and then you just go, how does he know where people are? How does he do this? And it's like every game is slightly different. You look at the minimap and there's pings going around, and I can't give it to anybody else. He's my MVP, and I'm very comfortable to say that. But I hate to say that because sometimes I feel like Reiner does deserve it, and I don't like it. But yeah, that's me. Initialize, as you have already decided who your overall MVP is. Yes. Who are you giving the mantle, the medal, even?
So I wanted so badly to give it to Boogie.
Of course you did.
Given it to Reiner.
Wow. Okay, so we kind of... I imagine you're on the opposite side of where I am. But similar.
Yeah, and I think partly it's basically every area I've looked at in terms of how he is playing the game has really impressed me. I think I think Archer's been phenomenal, but I think the better part of that duo for me is just how damn good Reiner is right now. Yeah. And it's like he has done something of everything. He has won the lane for them. He has just roamed really well on things like Thresh and Set. He has got great vision control. He has pulled off dives really well. He has done defensively really well. He has also made some of the single biggest clutch plays to win V3 games that they would have otherwise lost. The game versus DFM where they were struggling, they were down 6,000-7,000 gold. He finds the flash hook onto Torimichi. He finds the flash interrupt on the TF gate. Those kind of things where you go, that wins you games. The flash face breaker from Out of Darkness, finding the flank versus
maybe
CJ,
the best play still of the
face
split.
Breaker. Like some of these plays where it's like, it's not just the nitty gritty, you're playing mechanically really well. It's also the clutch. Okay. And for me, Boogie has played the stats super damn well, and he's been sublime. He is the best jungler, he's possibly the best mechanical player. I think Reiner has made more game-winning plays for them more consistently.
But good thing to note, 2v3 players. 2v3 players so far. If we're doing an MVP team, we're giving it to V3. Nymera, you've heard our candidates. You've heard who we think you should vote for.
He says Arya now.
Of course he is. But even though he's not got an overall MVP vote, so it's going to...
I'm going to use Sam's logic in terms of the game-winning plays. For Boogie, not Reiner.
Okay.
I'm going for Boogie. In terms of the game-winning plays, it's not always those 2-second to 5-second highlight reels where you're like, the hook lands. Something hits there. It's like Trundle ganking every lane on the map and destroying Pyrrhian's stats and saying, wait, this...
really fast.
And it's, for me, Boogie has consistently dismantled game plans. It's not always been in those 30-second highlight clips. It sometimes is, sometimes with the ganks into mid lane. or wherever. It's him turning up at exactly the right time. It's him stealing the buff at level 1 from someone.
Oh, that was dirty.
Yeah, it's dirty. It's him battling it out against the best players in his role and also spreading that pressure elsewhere. It's him being good in skirmishes, team fights, level 1 pathing, and just taking people's game plans and ripping them apart in a way which no other player does in the LJL. I really was torn on giving it to Reiner as well, for the reasons you've said, because he's that good and he is that far above the rest of his role.
Yeah.
And there's something to say about that as well, and saying like no other support is within a mile of him right now. But Boogie is just, I mean, the thing for me is like particularly against teams, he's out skirmished CGA, he's out thought Sengoku, he's out smoke and mirrors DFM.
The only one I'm really sad about is we don't have true Rascal Jesters. They're the that's what I'm so sad about right now, because we've got this absurdly cool stuff happening for V3, and I'm like, man, if Rascal Jesters and Ninja and crew were all there, I'd be like, you know what? They're the only team that I genuinely could think could find a way to beat them, because Rascal Jester didn't give a fuck.
They play spoilers so well.
They also didn't give a fuck in the pick and ban phase. They didn't give a fuck about anybody. They were the only team to ever just go to DFM, go, yeah, take it. We don't give a fuck, and almost beat them.
I think the thing about Boogie as well is that, I mean, I said it for his for the jungle mid-split MVP as well, is that he's done it on multiple he's done it on 5 champions, whereas Reiner's done it on 3. And he's done it on, so he's played Lee Sin 3 times, Nidalee, Graves, Trundle, Elise. They are all such different champions, and he does the same damn thing on all of them. You know, he just wins the game one way or another, and he plays around his win conditions. Maybe the one game you could say, oh, that was a bit awkward, right? Was the one versus DFM. He ended that game 5-1 and 11. He was like surviving everything, team fighting like a god, and still managing to turn up to the play to end up nullifying some of the wins that DFM were getting.
And worth noting also, Reiner is the other player for Sam's side. He was the other player who didn't die. He didn't die. He went 2-0-19 against DFM.
Fucking
Boogie
and when he turned that game around, the hooks in that game, when Boogie was like, I'm 0-1-1.
Just
0-0-1.
But Sam, that like, we need to VOD review this, because the point where like he manages to like kicks Wukong away. He kicks Wukong away. So in the team fight after the first one, he solos out Ebby and gets. So he solos out Ebby on the Wukong when he's using Cyclone. So he 1v1s the top laner as a jungler, and then also gets Gang to use his Devour on Tom Kench, which means it's not available to save the TF, and he kicks Gang into the team after that as well. So he gets like 2 kills for his team on the second team fight in a row. And before that, he was the guy who was like closing down distances while using his kick. The guy,
and the amazing thing is, while this is happening, Reiner landed a hook on Utapon and killed Utapon, right? And it's like, what is going on?
The other play in that for Reiner was there was the blind flash flay against the invisible.
That was
coming in for the
and there was the other one. Like, he flays Ebby out of his Nimbus strike, and he also puts the box down to stop him from walking forward with the Cyclone, which means that Archer walks away and doesn't get knocked up. Like the special thing about V3 is that every one of their players makes these plays. Literally everyone, even Ace, which I've had my complaints about.
The double hook against DFM.
He has that the double chain. The first chain flashes Ebby's flash. Then the next one locks up Gang and then gets that first kill for them after that. It's just, this team has all the star power right now. It's ridiculous.
I think it's fair to say that between what we're saying in this conversation is the 2 best players in the league right now are Reiner and Boogie, and they are playing phenomenally well right now.
And they have amazing support cast around them.
Sure.
Who would your third players guys be then? Is that the more interesting conversation? Who would your third MVP be?
Oh, God. I think I would then have to probably go for Apperman. If you had to twist my arm, I think I'd go for Apperman. I think, because if I'm going by the people that have got votes here, it would have to be Apperman. I think if Arya was on the list of overall of players that we've given
Arya,
votes
Blank, or Apperman. It's one of the 3.
I'm going once.
Arya doesn't...
I'd go once.
Arya hasn't got the vote, so I can't give the vote, technically, if we use that system. But if Arya was there, I probably would twist my arm and go Arya, or Apperman. God. They're the only 2 I could even think of giving it to. I see the argument for once.
I go for once, just because in the Atlas Award, he has been carrying that squad so damn hard. There is a corpse behind him that is on fire, the burning corpse, and he is the one guy looking to get them to the ambulance to the ER for some life force resuscitation.
It's what Arya's definitely
proud and very funky.
I think I would have to kind of stick to the meme, and I probably would go Arya. I'm not gonna say that because like I still gave him all my the regular bits, right?
Sure.
The regular.
And he's normally our outright envy. Like he had the second most votes out of unanimous votes out of all of us. So,
but there's still a shout for like Blank and Apperman. It's been Apperman and Blank. Well, that's the thing is that Arya makes it mid lane focus when he's in the game, which is also very funny.
Yeah.
But then like Apperman, like you're saying, like he's actually doing
been very
ridiculously well.
And part of the thing is Sengoku haven't been playing bot side focus. They've been playing mid and top side. And Apperman has leaped at the opportunity like an ape and fully made every top laner regret ever questioning him, as he has he's been winning 1v1s versus everyone, and the Ebby one we've said countless times, and I hate to bring up another time, but that is genuinely huge. It's been how many years, Sam?
He's played for like 4 years or something like that.
Yeah, he has.
And he's never beaten Apperman consistently, has he?
Not really.
And he took like a year off, I think, as well.
Something like that, yeah.
And he came back, and his champion pool was very small. We're finally seeing that his champion pool is getting bigger. And also that champion pool is really effective right now.
And yeah, I think I would twist my arm and give it to him. But yeah, I can't not give it to Boogie or Reiner first. They have to come first or second.
And that says something, right? To actually have an interesting discussion, you have to go to the third place. Because like this is like the bottom rung of the podium.
I maybe like, Archer to a point in some spots I would be able to give it to.
Yeah, maybe. No, the guy's been really good. The guy has been really good. But then it's also like if you slotted in maybe like Utapon or Gango or whatever, then Reiner still makes them look really good. It's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
But that's it. That's kind of where we sit, everybody. Boogie / Reiner, best current MVPs, and it's pretty unanimous over on the podcast side of things. We gave our review, and as it seems, we pretty much agree with our past selves and how the voting has been weighted. We miss a few players. We're a little bit sad that maybe other people haven't had as much of a nod or even a nod at all, but
relatively on point.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, we are in agreement, and I think that's everything. I want to pass it over to Initialize and then Nymera for any quick closing thoughts before we end this podcast.
I think we have seen some really stellar play out of the LJL this split, and I think looking over these players and thinking about how they've been playing, it's like we have looked at some of the PCS, the VCS, OCE, some of these other regions. We've gone, actually, some of these guys at the top of the LJL right now, probably fairly competitive with these guys. And that gives me a lot of hope as this split continues, assuming people don't fall off a cliff with patch changes. It has happened before. It will happen again. And there is half a split to play. We know rosters can fall apart. But where we're at on the trajectories we are seeing, there is some serious hope for the LJL going forward, I think, right now.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, that's the easy thing to say, right? There's still that apprehension of, I really don't want to put my cards on the table and say the LJL are good, but I'll do it. No, the LJL are good right now. LJL are looking pretty good. I think that if V3 maintains this level and they lose this split and they don't win the finals, then the team we send will be truly monstrous. If they keep this form and improve and they win, they will be truly monstrous. I think that I'm looking forward to whatever international competition we get. We don't know what's happening with Worlds and all the other stuff, but I think there's a light on. There's a light on the LJL house, and it's welcoming back victorious people, I think.
There's a lot of hopes, a lot of aspirations over in the LJL, and we're all very hopeful that this could be the year for the LJL to make a good run. The players are there, the teams are there, our MVPs are also there. Can we continue to see this reign of dominance, or will we boogie on down and maybe go in a different direction? I had to get those two names in there. I had to. But if you are interested in what we've been saying, you can find each of our respectable Twitter handles below us. Obviously, at Nymera, at Initialize with a 1 in there, or at Mars1. Obviously, you can find all of our thoughts and any coverage that we do happen to do over on at LJLUnofficial over on Twitter, or at LJL_officially_unofficial, or just Googling LJLUnofficial. You'll also be able to find our YouTube channel where we do host all of our VODs and this podcast if you're listening to it audio-wise.
He hit the bullseye there. You know, he's such a good archer. He's the ace in the hole, and I'll pass it back over to him.
No.
Yes.
No.
That's V3 for 3.
Yeah, he's drawn a blank. I'm peering onto his screen, and
I shouldn't have started this. I'm a terrible person.
It's going to NT like it began, and we'll have to deal with the puns.
Thank you everyone for watching and or listening. We'll be back next week, as always, with more podcasting action. But until then, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all very, very soon.
I'll go have a nap.